Good evening, Hofstra fans, and welcome to Sports Beat. I'm your host, Tommy Aquilina, and we've got a great episode for you tonight. The Hofstra men's basketball team is getting ready for their preseason games. The NBA season is right around the corner, and the New York sports market is intriguing as ever. We also spoke with Hofstra men's basketball star Jalen Ray. So don't go anywhere, Hofstra fans, because Sports Beat starts right now. I'm joined here with my panelists, Viglucci and Kyle Russo. Let's get started with the Hofstra men's basketball team. So guys, we're talking about college basketball right now, but this is kind of our first pro segment as well because former NBA player, former Hofstra Pride member, Speedy Claxton, the new 13th head coach in program history. Guys, what can we expect from him in year one?
Well, Tommy, what I'm most excited about with Speedy Claxton becoming the new head coach, obviously a Hofstra alum and one of the best basketball players to represent the Pride, but also championship pedigree being brought to the table. Obviously, we know in 2003 he won the NBA championship with the San Antonio Spurs, working as the backup point guard behind Tony Parker, working with guys like Tim Duncan, working with guys like Manu Ginobili, and then obviously being under Greg Popovich, one of the greatest coaches in the NBA. So bringing that type of repertoire, bringing that type of resume to the Pride is only going to make them better.
And Claxton is definitely a unique hire for the Pride, the most intriguing hire for their team in Pride history. Look, Claxton's going to give that player's perspective. All these guys have tons of respect for Speedy Claxton, NBA champion, arguably one of the best players to come out of Hofstra Pride. And look, this team is filled with newcomers. 9 new players added to this roster. We have about 3-4 guys that were staying there from last year. And look, returnees, Jalen Ray, Caleb Burgess, Kevon Kramer. I really am optimistic about what Claxton's going to be able to do with this group, especially with the guards. That dynamic between Caleb Burgess and Jalen Ray is going to be really interesting. I think Claxton's going to turn Jalen Ray into a 20-point-per-game scorer. I think Kevon Kramer is going to discipline his game very well. So I'm really excited to see what Coach Claxton is going to do for the Pride this year.
Now, one thing you mentioned is that the roster looks a lot different than it did last year. So who are you guys looking at as guys who are going to step up and be the primary scorers for this team?
I think Jalen Ray is obviously going to be the primary ball handler, the floor facilitator, and also the primary scorer for this Hofstra Pride men's basketball team. But I also think guys like a Zach Cooks is going to step up tremendously as well as a grad student. Scored 1,700 points with NJIT as a 6'7" wingspan. I think he's going to be a tremendous component to this offense as well.
As I mentioned earlier in the show, Jalen Ray, look, he's going to average 20 points per game on this team. He's just been getting better year after year. Unfortunately, 2 seasons ago, the Pride made the NCAA tournament, weren't able to kind of capitalize on that due to the pandemic. I really think that these guys are amped up. There's going to be crowds back in the stands this year. Jalen Ray is going to be that main guy. Caleb Burgess is going to expand his game as well on the floor. Led the Pride with passing last year, had the most assists for Hofstra. I think he's going to expand his game in terms of scoring. And Kevon Kramer, a bit erratic last season, but I do believe that he's going to kind of discipline his game well and just be that athletic freak that everyone's come to know. And another guy that's caught my eye, newcomer Gerard Simmons from the University of Pennsylvania. He's 6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan. I think with losing Isaac Conte, him coming in is going to be a great fit for this team. I think on offense and defense, he'll be able to get some sneaky buckets in down low and really be a huge presence down there on defense for the Pride.
Now, with a bit of breaking news coming, the Pride just released their non-conference schedule yesterday, and it's ambitious, to say the least. So there are 12 games. If each of you had to pick 2 that you're really excited for, what would those be?
Well, Tommy, first game, I'm really excited against the matchup against Iona. Obviously, Rick Pitino being the head coach for Iona, bringing them to the NCAA tournament last year and winning the MAC championship for Iona last year. And then another matchup that's very intriguing as well to me is the Battle of Long Island, playing Stony Brook later in the year to defend Long Island and potentially compete for that title. I think those are going to be 2 games that are going to be very intriguing come the Pride schedule.
For me, the biggest matchup on the schedule is that opening matchup game in this non-conference schedule with Houston. Houston made the Final Four last year. They're really good. They're going to be a top 5 team this year in the country again. I really like that Claxton's got the Pride going up against Houston in that first matchup. And then a little bit later in the year, Arkansas is a little bit of a low-key powerhouse team too. They're going to be good. They're going to be steamrolling. And Hofstra, I really like that they have kind of a tough schedule. I know Maryland's on that schedule as well. I really like what they're going to be able to do this year.
So now let's talk about Hofstra specifically, because the fans are going to be able to come back in the stands. The COVID restrictions are going to be a little bit more relaxed. So with the team playing well the last few years, fans finally being able to get back in the stands, and a former NBA champion now as the head coach of the program, how excited do you think the fans going to be next year? What kind of an impact do you think that's going to have?
I think it's going to play a tremendous role, Tommy. Obviously, last time things were normal in the world. We had a big fan base within the crowd supporting the Hofstra men's pride as they were on their way to the NCAA tournament, obviously winning the CAA championship, but not being able to play in the NCAA tournament because of the pandemic happening. And then for such a young team in this year, as we alluded to earlier, being so young, having a new coach, they're going to need the support of this fan base of the Hofstra pride at every single game to support them throughout the season.
I think the hype is real here for Hofstra. They have all this new talent coming in. Jalen Ray, Caleb Burgess supposed to take a big step up. I really think that the crowd's gonna be roaring for the pride, and they're gonna need it because, as Kyle mentioned, they had that crowd when they made it to the NCAA tournament 2 years ago. They're gonna be feeding off that crowd. Claxton's a very respectable head coach, not just for the players but the fans too. They're gonna kind of feed off that energy. And the hype is real for Hofstra Pride this year.
There are a lot of reasons for the Hofstra Pride fans to be excited. They're going to be packing the MAC this year, I would imagine. It should be really, really exciting. Speaking of exciting, earlier this week, our very own Mike Senatore was able to interview Jalen Ray from the men's basketball team. So let's take a look.
What's up, Sports Beat? I'm Mike Senatore, and I am here with Jalen Ray of Hofstra men's basketball. Jalen, thanks for sitting down and talking with us today.
Problem anytime.
So getting right into it, last year you finished up your undergraduate degree, but you decided to come back to the Pride, give it one more go. So what are some of the biggest factors that went into that decision for you?
Academics. My mom, big on education. So, I could come back and get my master's. And, I don't know a lot of people where I'm from with that. So, just having a safety net for after basketball.
So this is going to be a different year for the men's basketball team with a lot of additions to the program, both in terms of players and coaches, with Speedy Claxton now being named the head coach of the team. What can you say about Coach Claxton's style and how he's been getting you guys ready for the season?
Coach Speedy, his style is different from Mahalik and everything, more fast-paced, more defensively. And Speedy, he knows what it takes to get it done here. He's just showing us the way, really.
So this season brings a lot of incoming players to the team, and you've sort of stepped up into a leadership role as, the team's veteran. And you've been through a lot of ups and downs with this program, through the 2019 CAA championship win, to the unfortunate cancellation of the NCAA tournament, and then last year's loss in the semifinals to Elon University. So how are you using sort of your wealth of experience in your leadership with these new players, both on and off the court?
With the new people coming in, they know I'm a veteran. I've been here. So, I know what it takes in those moments when you win a championship and when you take your opponent for granted and lose. So, I know the difference, the work you have to put in. I'm just letting those guys know so they can be prepared.
Now, I know it's early into practices, but what can you tell us about some of the incoming players for the Pride? There's 9 players total who are going into their first season with the team. So what do you think these guys can bring to the table?
They bring a lot of aggressiveness. We have a lot of guys, who won't back down, play with energy all the time. So, people think, we're taking a step backwards, but they're going to be surprised.
So last season didn't end the way that you guys wanted with a loss to Elon in the semifinals of the CAA championship. So with this program entering a new era this season, how are you guys hoping to bounce back from that disappointing end to last season and reach the ultimate goal of the NCAA tournament?
How we bounce back, we just use that game as motivation, that ended our season right there and we had a goal to reach, we didn't get there. So it just reminds us what we have to do to get back to that point and this time win.
Thanks again to Jalen Ray for coming on the show and talking with me. For Sports Beat, I'm Mike Senatore. Now let's get back to the studio.
Thank you, Mike. Shifting gears now toward the NBA, and boys, there are a lot to talk about. The 76th NBA season will feature an 82-game regular season for the first time since the 2018-19 season because of the COVID-19 pandemic. with the season commencing just 13 days from this show on October 19th. Let's dive right into the Eastern Conference. And guys, we're going to start with the two New York teams. First, the New York Knicks. They were a top 4 seed last year in their first year under head coach Tom Thibodeau. Now they're not going to surprise anybody. They retooled this offseason. What do you think their ceiling is next year?
Tommy, I think their ceiling is a seed in around number 5, and I think their floor is around probably an 8 seed in this year's NBA schedule. The thing with the Knicks about last year specifically, Tom Thibodeau is known for, I don't want to say overworking his players, but making his players, his stars especially, playing a lot of minutes. And Julius Randle actually led the NBA in minutes played last year, along with R.J. Barrett being in that top 5 category as well. You can't do that in order to succeed later on in the season. We saw when they got to the playoffs, they almost in a sense looked tired because of how much they were played during the regular season. Now adding Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier to the mix, 2 great scorers, but at the same time, what are the Knicks going to get out of Kemba Walker, who necessarily hasn't looked that great, especially in a Boston Celtics uniform during his tenure there, was much better in his Charlotte Hornet days. It's really an X factor to know what they're going to be getting out of these 2 players.
For me, I'm very optimistic about this Knicks team. I like what they did this offseason. I'm very excited to see that dynamic between Derrick Rose in the backcourt with Kemba Walker. I think Kemba Walker's got a lot on his shoulder, a chip on his shoulder. He's got a lot to prove this season. A lot of people were kind of writing him off after last year in Boston. I like the addition of Evan Fournier. He can drop 20 on you any night. And yeah, I know a lot of people want to critique Thibodeau for these minutes, for Julius Randle especially and R.J. Barrett. Those are 2 guys they were amongst the top 5 in all of the league in terms of most minutes played. But I do think that getting these stars will kind of alleviate that. Alec Burks is another guy who they brought back. He's a very underrated scorer. He can get you 20 any night as well. Bringing back Mitchell Robinson and Nerlens Noel down there is going to really increase their defensive presence. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league last year, and I'm very excited to see what this Knicks team can do. I really believe they can end up top 4 in the NBA if everything goes right.
Now let's talk about a team with a super high ceiling, the Brooklyn Nets. They came devastatingly close last year. They end up losing in Game 7 to the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference semifinals. The Bucks go on to win the championship. You've got Kevin Durant back. You've got Kyrie Irving back when he's able to play. You've got James Harden back. LaMarcus Aldridge re-signed. Paul Millsap signed on. Guys, what has to happen for the Nets to not represent the East in the NBA Finals this year?
Tommy, the key to the Nets' success is just staying healthy, because we saw in that Milwaukee series especially, the Nets were up 2-0 on the Milwaukee Bucks in that series, go to Game 3, pretty terrible performances by both offenses for both the Bucks and the Nets. The Bucks win that game, 80% of the scoring coming from both Chris Middleton and Giannis in that game. Go to Game 4, Bucks win that game too. Kyrie Irving goes down early in that game. Kevin Durant has to kind of support the offense. James Harden gets rushed back into Game 5. They win that. The Bucks win the next game. And like you said, a Game 7 scenario without a Kyrie Irving, who's your key player, kind of a key point guard and key offensive player in this mix in terms of how far the Nets can go. I think really health is the determining factor in how far these Nets team goes.
Look, Kyle said it best. There's an old saying out there, the best ability is availability. You're not going to get it done if your stars aren't on the court. You can add up as much talent as you want, but if your best guys aren't out on the floor, you're not going to get anything done. You're not going to win those championships. And I think the Nets have so much star power, have so much shooting. That trio of Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant, in terms of scoring, it doesn't get better than that. You're getting buckets everywhere, three-pointers, mid-range shots, driving in. 3 of the best scorers this game has ever seen. And defensively, there's a lot of questions there, but there's nobody stopping the Nets. But we do got to give respect to the Milwaukee Bucks. A lot of people aren't really talking about them. They won the NBA championship. Giannis, again, is going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder as well. But I do think the only way the Nets lose is injury, and we saw that last season.
Now let's talk about a team that did not do as well last year. Obviously, you have 10 teams making the playoffs because of the play-in tournament. So out of the teams that didn't come in the top 10 last year, which one do you think in the Eastern Conference has the best chance to make the playoffs? And as a follow-up question, why is it the Chicago Bulls?
Well, Tommy, like you alluded to right there, the Chicago Bulls have one of the best off seasons that we've seen in a while, obviously during last year's trade deadline. I think they made the biggest and best move, adding Nikola Vucevic, who's a 24-11 type of player, a big man that has the versatility to not only defend but score outside the perimeter and shoot threes as well. Then we see their offseason, we fast forward to the summertime, they bring in Alonzo Ball, who's key defensively, one of the best young point guards in the league, and has tremendously elevated his game offensively as well since his earlier rookie days in an LA Lakers uniform. And then bringing in that veteran presence in DeMar DeRozan as well is only going to further help to improve the Chicago Bulls team and elevate them and where they could reach this season.
Yeah, look, Chicago really got a lot of great talent this offseason. But another team that I just want to throw out there, Miami Heat, I know they were top 6 in the East last year, but a lot of people were kind of writing them off after the sweep against Milwaukee, but they got guys as well. They got PJ Tucker, they signed Kyle Lowry, championship pedigree and defense onto an already defensively stacked team. I think Miami could finish top 3 in the East. They've been to the finals. Jimmy Butler's back. Bam Adebayo's back. They're hungry. Tyler Hero, a lot of people didn't really like how he performed last year. I think he's going to take another step up, and Miami to me is that dark horse team in the East that I think could beat anybody in a 7-game series.
One team we haven't talked about, just super quickly, the Philadelphia 76ers. If Ben Simmons doesn't play for them this year, where do you think they finish in the regular season, Kyle?
I think they finish around the 7th seed. I think that we saw Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris, the combination of those two guys, they're able to put up offensive numbers, but without the defensive aspect of Ben Simmons, I think that hurts them in a sense as a team.
I think the Sixers, I mean, this might be a hot take, but the Sixers could end up being in the play-in game. I don't really like this drama with Ben Simmons and Embiid, so it's going to be interesting to see what unfolds this season.
It will be interesting, but now we're going to shift from the Eastern Conference to the Western Conference, where storylines also abound. So first, let's talk about the Western Conference Finals last year. The Phoenix Suns defeat the LA Clippers this offseason. The Clippers bring back Kawhi Leonard. He is injured. He's going to miss the beginning of the season, but they bring him back. Chris Paul returns to the Suns. Do you think we're headed for a rematch of the Western Conference Finals?
Tommy, I don't think we are, with Kawhi Leonard being injured the way he is right now, missing probably a majority of the beginning of the season. I don't know if the Clippers have the weapons at their disposal to keep up and be a competitive team and reach the Western Conference Finals this year. And now we transition to the Phoenix Suns, who appeared in the finals last year. I think that they got on their run. While they are a great team, and I do think that some people are undervaluing what they brought to the table and their run last year, they also had a lot of luck fall their way, especially in round 1 of the playoffs last year. Anthony Davis going down early basically eliminated the Lakers as a whole. LeBron James really never came back the same way after suffering that injury midway through the season against the Atlanta Hawks, rolling that ankle. Didn't really look the same in that playoff performance, so I don't think we're going to see either of these teams in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a little more higher on and optimistic on Phoenix, but that Kawhi Leonard being out is just going to be a huge loss for them. He's missing a significant portion of the season. You know, let's see. I mean, playoff P, Paul George is the real deal. Let's not get that twisted. You know, he can put the Clippers in a position, maybe a lower seed in the West. I don't think they're going to be top 4, and we'll get into that later. But I do think that Kawhi Leonard not being there is going to really hurt them. I do think Phoenix could get back. They retained all of their players. They got Chris Paul. DeAndre Ayton's going to be a top 5 center by the end of this season. I really believe in him. He's really great offensively. He's got nice footwork. He has a very underrated mid-range, and they got JaVale McGee, who's champion as well. So I think Phoenix can come back, but if we're talking Western Conference champion, it's all about the Lakers.
So now let's actually talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. Revamped, retooled, excited, reinvigorated, all words you could use to describe them. How much better do you think the Lakers are going to be than they were last year?
Tommy, I think they're going to be a lot better because, like I said, 2 key pieces in LeBron James and Anthony Davis being hurt really put a falter on their season. And then the depth in which they added this year, adding back Dwight Howard, who played such a pivotal role in the 2020 championship that they won, adding Kent Bazemore, Trevor Ariza, Carmelo Anthony, who still is a 20-point-per-game scorer if you give him the opportunity to night in and night out, adding Malik Monk, adding Kendrick Nunn, Wayne Ellington, Rajon Rondo, DeAndre Jordan, and most key of all to me in this Lakers team is Russell Westbrook, because for the first time, in my personal opinion, he's going to have the ability to play his game without having all the pressure and the weight of the world on him to be the star and key performer in order to win the basketball game.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I don't understand these people that want to doubt the Lakers when you got this much talent. I mean, they were doing it with the Nets last year, but I mean, you add 3 top 5, top 10 talents. I mean, they'll figure it out. And especially LeBron James and Anthony Davis with Dwight Howard and Rajon Rondo. They won a championship before. They have that collection, that group of guys. Bringing in Carmelo Anthony, getting Russell Westbrook. I mean, it's kind of crazy. They have all this talent. And, you know, Westbrook, Rondo, and LeBron each are the 3 of the best playmakers we've ever seen dribble a basketball. And Anthony Davis is one of the best big men, is on his way to being a top 5 big man of all time. And, you know, the Lakers, I don't see them, again, we talked about it with the Nets. The only thing that's going to impede the Lakers from making it out of the West is injury, too. But we got to give respect to Phoenix, but because they just made it to the finals. But, I mean, this Lakers team is just so deep and so top-heavy. It's going to be really hard for anybody to beat them in a 7-game series.
So now we're talking about teams that have a lot of talent on their rosters, but I want to ask you guys, because there's a couple teams that have talent-laden rosters but haven't been to the playoffs in years. So out of the two of them, which one do you think is more likely to make it this year? The Minnesota Timberwolves or the New Orleans Pelicans?
Tommy, at this point in time, I'd have to say the Minnesota Timberwolves. They've had a good squad for a while now, but the key factor in them as well has been injury. Obviously, we know it's a part of the game, but losing Karl-Anthony Towns, only playing 50 games last year. D'Angelo Russell, who's a key point guard for them as well, only playing 42 games. And another key player on this Minnesota Timberwolves squad that people kind of forgot about, Malik Beasley, played the first 37 games of the season and really stepped up for the Timberwolves, averaging around 19 points per game. Now with health, the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think, have the edge over a team in the New Orleans Pelicans who lost a key point guard, Lonzo Ball, this offseason.
Yeah, Minnesota, they're very young. They're hungry as well. They got a lot of doubters, but I do feel that New Orleans is, like, I really like that duo of Zion and Brandon Ingram. I feel like that's like a baby LeBron and baby KD. Zion averaged 27 points per game last year on like 62% shooting. Like, that's insane. He was just a walking bucket, 280 pounds. Now, look, a lot of people are writing them off, too, because everyone's upset that Lonzo Ball is not there anymore and Steven Adams isn't there anymore. But you replace those two guys with Devontae Graham and Jonas Valanciunas, and Jonas Valanciunas is a big body as well, walking double-double. Devontae Graham can pull up from half court. I think if pieces fall into place, I think they could sneak their way into the play-in just because of how great Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram are.
So we've been talking about a lot of talented rosters with all the talent in the West. What does each of your top four look like at the end of the regular season?
I think the Lakers will be atop the West, finish at the number 1 seed. At number 2, I think the Denver Nuggets will be there. We saw what they're capable of doing. Jamal Murray getting hurt last season in the playoffs really hurt them. Golden State having Klay Thompson back, I think, is going to be a pivotal piece in their championship run as well, getting him. And also the Utah Jazz finishing around the 4th seed. So that rounds out my top 4 in the Western Conference.
For me, number 1, obviously got to go with the Los Angeles Lakers with all that talent. For me, I'm putting Phoenix at number 2 just because I got to give them their respect. They went to the finals, didn't lose anybody in free agency, got a champion. I like that backcourt with CP3 and Booker. 3, I got Denver Nuggets, and I'm finishing number 4 with Utah just because they have too much talent as well.
A lot of talented teams in the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference. Should be a really exciting season. But we are going to take another short break now. We will be right back.
I'm just not sure they're the right fit. Maybe it's an audio issue. Hey, could you guys speak a little bit louder? You know what? Sometimes less is more.
Cash. Emily.
Thought that'd work.
He's on fire.
Welcome back. It was an eventful week in New York for most sports fans, with the Jets and Giants both winning in overtime and the Yankees getting eliminated in the AL wildcard game. So let's actually start there with the Yankees. They were World Series favorites in a lot of people's minds coming into the season. They end up winning 92 games, tying for second place, and losing in the wildcard game to their biggest rival. What went wrong for the Yankees this year?
Tommy, to describe this Yankees season, it was just an absolute roller coaster. So many injuries early on during the season, not really having a solidified pass. Garrett Cole really is starting number 2 through number 5 pitcher throughout the entirety of the season, switching Gary Sanchez and Kyle Higashioka game in and game out to get the bats working, and just a lot of underperforming by this Yankees lineup with the exception of Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge as well. And then towards the latter part of the season, we saw they had some terrific win streaks of 13 games in the month of August, but then lost a lot of key games directly after that win streak with games like the Baltimore Orioles, who finished with one of the worst records in baseball, the Los Angeles Angels, some key games that they needed to win, going right down to the end of the season with game 162, having to win that game on a walk-off single by Aaron Judge. to describe this Yankee season is just an absolute roller coaster because of all these injuries.
Yeah, and a roller coaster is definitely a perfect way to describe the season. For me, it's two big things. Injuries and inconsistency really plagued them this season. They had a lot of injuries top to bottom, the Yankees. They were really stacked, as you mentioned, Tommy. World Series favorites in a lot of people's eyes, but not enough pitching and too many injuries and too many bad losses and times where you can't lose. And, they went on a 13-game win streak in August, and that was great. But you got to keep that. You got to sustain that throughout the September, because in baseball it's all about winning and getting hot at the right time, especially when October's approaching. And it's unfortunate that the Yankees weren't able to make it, but they got a lot of work to do. And I think injuries definitely and inconsistency, their inability to sustain winning, was huge into their collapse last night.
Now, if you're a Yankee fan, obviously disappointed with the way the season went. But while the Yankees made the playoffs for the 5th year in a row, the New York Mets missed the playoffs for the 5th year in a row, and they actually just relieved their manager, Luis Rojas, of his duties. So where do they go from here?
Well, Tommy, it was rumored that the Mets would be interested in hiring Theo Epstein to their organization to be the president/GM to run operations, but it was confirmed today by John Heyman that the Mets will be out on Theo Epstein, as Steve Cohen and Epstein had conversations and just said that the timing and fit was not right at this time. But it is rumored now that the Mets are interested in Billy Beane potentially to take over operations of the New York Mets, and we see obviously back in the early 2000s when he was the president and GM of the Oakland Athletics, what he was able to do. We obviously know what happened. But the Mets have a lot of questions elsewhere, Tommy, as well. A lot of key free agents, guys like Syndergaard, Conforto, Baez, and Stroman to make decisions, which are key players in this Mets lineup for the future.
And look, I know it's hard, but the Mets, they got to try not to overpay on big guys and hand out that crazy money. I know the market in the MLB is wild, and you got guys like Tatis and Francisco Lindor who just get paid, millions and millions of dollars on lengthy deals. But I think that's where it starts for the Mets. I know they're in a little bit of a flux right now in terms of finding that president, that GM. But I do think investing in the draft might be their best bet right now, just with all their confusion. Just try your best to just invest and build your players up. They really botched it this draft with their first-round pick in Kumar Rocker from Vanderbilt. But I do believe that, you got to be optimistic about the Mets. I know it's tough, but I do think the Mets, if they figure things out, try not to overpay for these guys, work Lindor better into the lineup, because he wasn't bad in the field. He just had problems swinging. So I think the Mets, they can fix things, but it starts at the top.
So now let's shift gears to the gridiron a little bit. For the first time since December of 2019, the Giants and Jets won on the same day this past Sunday. We'll start with the Jets. They get an overtime win over the Tennessee Titans. What have you guys liked from head coach Robert Saleh and QB Zach Wilson so far this year?
What I've liked about Robert Saleh is that he holds his players accountable and is also very respectable as an individual. The way he holds players accountable not only, but supports his players as well. Zach Wilson having such a bad start to the season, I believe, with 7 interceptions, going scoreless in the Denver game in Week 3, and then coming out against the Tennessee Titans, everything seemed to click offensively. We saw the combination of Corey Davis for a 50-plus yard touchdown, Jamison Crowder, after being on the IR the first 3 weeks of the season, going in, getting 7 receptions for 61 yards and a touchdown, working in, and Elijah Moore potentially was the second-round pick this year, and Denzel Mims potentially last year, second-round pick as well, to potentially support Zach Wilson. And that's what I've liked, what I've seen out of this Jets team so far.
For me, Robert Saleh has really transformed that defense. That defense is really, really good. I like that defense a lot. And Zach Wilson's a gunslinger. He has a lot of faith in his quarterback. And the Jets could really surprise people. That win over the Titans was really good. And Zach Wilson, I believe, could end up being the future of the Jets. He's been a little bit in that slump in the beginning, but I do believe that Saleh is definitely embedded a new culture in the Jets organization, and it's exciting for Jets fans.
Really quickly from each of you guys, the New York Football Giants could be 3-1, but they're 1-3. They play the Dallas Cowboys this week. Was their win against the Saints last week an aberration, or is this more of what we're going to see going forward? Really quickly.
Tommy, I think we need to see more consistency. Arguably the best game of Daniel Jones' career, opening up that playbook. But we need to see that week in and week out. One game is great, but you got a 17-week schedule, and you got to play like that all year round.
Yeah, the Giants have definitely had trouble sustaining winning, and I do believe it starts with Daniel Jones. He's got to play better.
He's got to play better. We'll try to play better next time, because unfortunately that's all the time that we have tonight. I want to thank my panelists, Joe Viglucci and Kyle Russo, along with Mike Senatore and Jalen Ray. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hofstra SB, and tune in on October 27th for our next episode. Until then, I'm Tommy Aquilina, and have a great night.